Yeah.
Welcome to the Faith Works podcast. I'm Trey Prophet, and I'm here with Michael York,
Hey,
the
Trey.
pastor at Fairview Baptist Church. And this is the second episode. Me and Mike go way back. He was my pastor for a while. I grew up at this church, and I'm very glad to be here and talking to you today.
Honored to be on.
So I just kind of wanted to give the few of my friends that are watching this right now, kind of a little backstory about you,
Okay.
kind of how we met, and what got us to where we are right now. So, from your perspective, coming to this church,
Mm-hmm.
what was it like to get to know all these new people? Because I'm sure you went to other churches too, right?
Yeah.
Before here.
Yeah. I mean, this is so Fairview is the fifth church I've served on a full time basis, and yeah, I mean, it was good. I've often said Fairview's the kindest church I've ever been a part of, and you know that,
Yeah.
and so the people here, honestly, not every church has made it as easy. I'll say it like that. And but it was just a matter of, I always just believe when God calls, God enables, and we were certain God was calling us here, and that puts a mutual desire in the pastor's heart and the church's heart, and that opens up a lot of doors. Yeah, our transition here was pretty good.
Yeah.
It's as good as it could be during COVID, if you remember.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah. It was during that whole time.
it was,
Yeah.
I mean, we were called here because we thought, oh, we're past all this stuff.
Yeah.
And then it came back and we had to go right back virtual and all
Man,
that
I
fun
remember
stuff.
that. I remember that. Yeah. Um, I remember Mike Rice
Yeah,
being the pastor here forever.
absolutely.
Absolutely love that guy.
Yeah.
Did you ever get to meet him?
I never got to meet
Oh
him.
man, he was amazing. I'm
Yeah.
sure you've heard all the
Yeah.
wonderful things about
I
him.
mean, I would have absolutely loved to meet him.
Yeah.
And I feel like I know him some through the stuff that I've
Yeah.
heard, but we have a lot of, matter of fact, I preached somewhere not long ago, and somebody came up to me who was also preaching at this conference, and they were friends with Mike Rice,
Yeah.
and yeah, it just, I wish I could have known him.
Yeah. I mean, he was great. I remember his passing, and
Sure.
then that hole that it left for a little bit, because it became a lot of testimonies and stuff for church services, and it was good, but uh, it really missed the pastoral role.
Sure.
And then I remember as soon as you were like in the talks as to be a pastor, it was like this church clung on to you, and they were like, we want Michael York as our pastor.
They wanted Sarah and Henry, and I just
That's
came along with them.
that's what it was. Yeah, no, I love Sarah and Henry.
Absolutely.
Henry's awesome.
Yeah, he's a good dude.
Is he doing good with school and
Yeah.
everything?
Yeah.
Good. Good. What grade's he in now?
He is in seventh.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. So he's same. Oh wow. See, I thought Peyton was a little older than him. I
Yeah, they're the same grade.
didn't know that.
Yeah.
So that's awesome. But yeah. Where did you preach before you got to
Yeah,
Fairview?
so before, the first church I served was in a community called Lancaster, Kentucky. So about 30 miles south of Lexington, and we were there for a while. And then served at a church in Lexington for a while. We were in Missouri for about 7 years, and it was while we were in Missouri that Fairview reached out to me. Matter of fact, um, the day I had to put everything on hold for COVID stuff, I got a phone call from Fairview, and I said, "Man," I was like, "I don't even know what's going on right now. I can't even talk." But um, that they said, "Well, we'll wait," and so through a series of things that continued, then we came
Yeah,
here.
that's awesome. Yeah, I remember the whole COVID
Uh,
time where. Am I remembering this wrong, or was there like caution tape on every other row or something like that
we
for a
had
while?
we had something like that. I don't think we did that very long. It was just
No,
kind of,
just when we got back off the
quite
Facebook
frankly,
lives.
yeah. I mean, quite frankly, some of that was done just for the sake of appearance and for the sake, you're trying to give comfort to people who were afraid of coming
Yeah,
out, and um,
I mean Fairview's always had like older
yeah,
older members,
yeah,
so
and
I can understand that.
but I mean, like again, older members, but Sarah being a type 1 diabetic, she's immunocompromised,
Yeah,
and so though she's young and healthy,
yeah, the
yeah, there's still. I mean,
yeah,
it was just at that time we didn't know anything,
yeah,
and so we were just trying to do the best we could, and
yeah,
it was throwing spaghetti against the wall and seeing what stuck.
yeah. I mean, I can imagine that though. You come
That's
into a church that has been without a pastor for a couple years, and then you just get hit with all this restrictions and stuff. I'm sure that was
Yeah,
tough.
but I mean, Fairview made it a lot easier
Yeah,
because I mean, I know pastors who got fired during that time for just trying to do the right thing. I know fights, not physical fights, but yelling
kind
that
of
happened
kind of
in church.
politicking
Yeah,
and stuff. Yeah,
just or and I mean, politics got brought into it. It's
yeah,
like if you wore a mask, then they assume this about your
yeah,
belief set. If you don't wear a mask, they believe, and it
yeah,
just instead of showing grace to one another like the Bible talks
yeah.
about, there was just a lot of assumptions made. As my grandfather used to say, jump into concussions.
Jump into concussions. That's funny. I like that.
Yeah,
Um, Speaking of your family,
yeah,
uh, so I did not know this, but your dad is the dean of theology at.
yeah. So Dad is he is the dean of the School of Theology at Southern
Mhm,
Seminary,
yeah,
the Southern Baptist Theological
yeah,
Seminary.
the Southern
You
Baptist.
gotta learn to say it like that,
Okay,
just like all those Ohio State players do. Uh, and he is also the professor of preaching
yeah,
there, so he serves in both
that's
roles.
awesome. Yeah, I'm taking a preaching class there. Not this semester, but
Gotcha.
it's going to be towards the end of my master's
Yeah,
or bachelor's.
bachelor's. Yeah,
Bachelor's. I get
yeah,
those mixed up.
yeah,
I mean, I'm still new to
yeah.
all
Of
this stuff.
course, of
I
course.
mean, this college jump was crazy for me
No,
though.
yeah, I'm happy for you though.
Yeah, I'm very excited, because when I started the whole college thing, I mean, I don't know how much of this you know, but I was going into the PT field
Right,
because that's what Dad does,
right.
and then this past summer at Fuge Camp, uh, I was with the youth group at Rose Hill,
Yeah,
and I don't know if you know Smooth David Green.
met him. Yeah,
Yeah, I told him I was like, I think I'm called to the ministry. I had just been witnessing to people throughout the week, and I was leading these little Bible studies and stuff on my own time, and I was
yeah.
like, I think that there's something there,
I
and
think you were the last to know.
I've heard it. I've heard it a long time
Yeah,
that people have said that
yeah,
I was, but
yeah. But I mean,
uh,
that's the way it's supposed to be.
yeah,
Part of the call to ministry is the affirmation of a church and the affirmation of other believers. If a person says I'm called and everybody else around them's going, that's
yeah,
not a good thing.
yeah.
But I think a lot of people recognize that in you for a while.
Well, I was very grateful to be told that they thought that was where I
Yeah,
was going to go anyway.
yeah,
And that's a daunting task to take on. I
absolutely.
mean, that's a big role. And so when I had told kind of my parents that I was called into ministry, we did this whole thing where my family came to church with us on a Sunday. I think it was the Sunday
Yeah,
after or something like
remember
that.
that. Yeah,
Yeah, they all went up to the front and prayed with me, and all the deacons and the elders of the church, they all came up, and it was pretty intimidating
yeah,
because like even just altar calls on their own can be intimidating, but
sure.
going up there and saying that I'm called into the ministry and having all the guys of the church come up and
Yeah,
pray for you
yeah,
was kind of nerve wracking,
yeah. It is.
but
It is.
I mean, I got excited because I was like, I'm gonna go learn at a Bible college, and my pastor Matt told me about Tri-State Bible College,
Right.
and so I had mentioned wanting to go there, but my parents wanted me to be financially stable
Of course.
because in church, what I've heard is you're either living off breadcrumbs or you're the Joel Osteen, and I'm sure that's not necessarily
Yeah,
true.
I hope
But
there's a middle road between
yeah,
those two
yeah.
things.
But speaking of the Joel Osteen thing, the other day I was talking to one of my friends. I don't know if you've heard about this, but I have a wrestling ring,
Right, you.
and uh, me and my friends make YouTube videos where we wrestle in it, of course. And I went to pick up one of my friends who's still in high school to go do one of these videos, and his grandparents were there, and they were asking me about kind of the future that I was going to have, and I felt like I was talking to a girlfriend's parents because they were like interrogating me
Yeah,
about my future, like who am I letting my kid go hang out with.
sure.
So I was telling them all this stuff, and I told them that I was going to school to be a pastor
Yeah.
and to kind of just learn theology. And they were like, "Oh, so you'll be the next Joel Osteen?" And I told them, I said, "I sure hope not."
Did you hear me say I was learning theology?
Yeah,
Anyway,
yeah,
anyway,
that's a
cheap shots.
cheap shots. But yeah, so I ended up going to Marshall for PT, but I also took I guess what could be considered like an exegetical class.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, so I had to write for my class a 90-page.
Right.
I sent it to
Yeah.
you, didn't I?
Yeah.
Yeah. That was
On Third John.
on Third John.
Right. Yeah. The
And
easiest book of the Bible to
right,
write a big long
right,
commentary
right.
on. Yeah.
I felt like I was milking a brick.
Yeah.
I mean, I was just jumping from all these different ways of studying it, but the more I started digging into like the originality of all this stuff, I
Mm-hmm.
found there was more stuff to write about,
Oh yeah.
and it got me about another 10 pages before
Yeah.
I started
Oh, yeah.
freaking out. But yeah, no, I really enjoyed that college because everybody there was nice. I don't know if you've met anybody that really works there,
No.
or the president Rex Howe was an amazing
We're
guy.
friends on Facebook.
Okay,
So,
that's close enough.
yeah.
He's awesome. They were all really great, and but after a semester at Marshall, I found myself more invested in my Bible work
Absolutely.
more than I was like say anatomy and stuff, because in high school I was good at anatomy.
Sure.
And it was the first class that I really took off in, and so I thought maybe there's something there. Maybe this is where I kind of want to go with it. And then as I took classes at Marshall, I got a full ride at Marshall,
Mm-hmm.
and I almost felt like a Disney character being like, I'm going to leave all these opportunities behind and go chase my dream. That's what I felt like. But
Yeah.
To be able to say, I don't really want this, I want to go where there's uncertainty, is, I mean, you have to do that. You have to if you're called.
Yeah. I mean, that's the original call of God's people, isn't it?
Yeah.
God tells Abraham, "You go out of Ur to a place I will show you." He didn't even tell him where he's going.
Yeah.
He just says, "Go, and I'll tell you when to stop."
Yeah. And that's kind of scary.
It
to
is.
just jump out into that stuff. But as I was searching kind of for something that could financially support me, because that was my mom's thing, was she was like,
Of course.
you need to support your family. You can't have when you get married, you can't have your wife paying all your bills for you. You can't be just being the. I guess she thought that I was kind of like a stay at home.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, pastors only work on Sundays and Wednesdays,
yeah.
right? Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Obviously, she knows more than
Of
that.
course.
But it was kind of scary for them, I think, for me to say that
yeah.
I want to go into the ministry.
Oh yeah.
Because I mean, you're either working, a normal sized church, or
Well, your employment's always at the behest of a volatile congregation.
oh yeah,
And I mean, I have talked to a number of people who are contemplating the call into ministry, and that's always a concern of parents. It's not, I don't, we want our kids to serve God, but we want them to have some security.
Yeah.
And that makes all the sense in the world. But this is just, I mean, it really is a leap of faith. It is stepping out and trusting that where God calls, He provides.
My dad says, "The Lord's will, His bill." That's what he said.
There you go.
But yeah, no. So I'm happy getting settled into Boyce.
Yeah,
The
man.
semester doesn't start for me until the 4th.
Yeah.
It's a late start,
Yeah.
but I'm very excited. I'm only doing online for the first little bit,
Right.
and that's just because I'm trying to get a job.
Sure.
So I'm still waiting on my call back from. Yeah. So but I'm trying to get a job, and I wanted to be able to stay at home and work and
Yeah.
really get myself settled into a job, because the only job I've ever had was a summer job,
Right.
and that was about it. So other than mowing people's yards here and
Sure.
there, not very good half the time, but mowing people's yards, that was pretty much my job experience.
Yeah.
So I wanted something
Yeah.
real.
Yeah.
So I wanted to start off online college, but looking at some of those classes I'm going to have to take,
Yeah.
yeah, like
Yeah.
Hebrew
Uh-huh.
and Greek,
Yeah.
virtually is going to be hard.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it's hard. Period.
Yeah.
My last semester at Boyce, because I wanted to graduate, I had to take 24 hours, and I did a Hebrew exegesis class and a Greek exegesis class, along with other things
At the same time?
At the same time.
Oh,
Yeah,
yeah,
just because I wanted to be done,
yeah.
and yeah, it was a fun semester.
Oh, I'm sure it was. I've got mine split up to where I'm doing Hebrew 1 next semester,
Yeah.
then Hebrew 2, then we'll do Greek 1 and Greek
Yeah,
2.
it's really fascinating what people gravitate towards Hebrew and what people gravitate towards Greek.
Yeah. I've heard
Um,
more girls gravitate towards Hebrew and more guys gravitate towards Greek.
I've not, that's possible. Usually more math brained people, in my experience, gravitate towards Hebrew.
Mm-hmm.
It's just a different kind of a language. Of course, my dad, growing up with him, his PhD's in Greek and New Testament, and so that was probably more in the background of my life, and so that one, I'm more of a Greek person than a Hebrew person.
Yeah.
But
Well,
you'll find out which. You let
I'm
me know which
not
one
certain
you are.
yet. I'm not certain yet. I have a little book at home that says 52 Hebrew words every Christian guy should know.
There
So
you go.
that's
Okay.
that's about the
Okay.
extent of what I know, and I don't know it very well either. But yeah, no, I'm very excited to start that whole thing. I'm going for Masters in Divinity.
Yeah.
And then this undergraduate that I'm going for is just biblical studies,
Yeah.
biblical theology. And the plan is to hopefully get myself a job as a chaplain to start. I would like to work as one of those in like a prison,
Oh yeah.
say, because I've got a lot of friends that I've met in the pro wrestling world
Oh sure.
that either have family in prison
Yeah.
or have like run-ins
Yeah.
with the law. Now, not really any that I wrestle with on a regular basis,
No.
but more just the Facebook friends that I've
Yeah.
made and stuff. And then just people that I know in general, like
Yeah. It's a tremendous ministry.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've known some prison chaplains, and God really moves in a lot of those areas. And I mean, not to sound corny, but you literally have a captive audience,
yeah,
and it's a time in people's life where they are most vulnerable and often are searching for answers, and a tremendous opportunity to do what prison is supposed to do, to rehabilitate.
yeah. I mean, a lot of people, I think, give prison or give people that are in prison some kind of like a short end of a stick. You know what I'm saying? Like they don't really give them much thought. And I think part of what kind of catapulted this idea of me wanting to be a chaplain to kind of start off was not necessarily just the people that I've met, but it even happened back in high school. I was co-president of the FCA at my high school, and we started wanting to do this ministry with not the juvenile kid, you know what I'm talking about, like the alternative school kids that got placed to the side, and they kind of had stigma around them where people were just like, "Oh, those kids are rough," and stuff.
Yeah.
And they almost felt like they were like imprisoned away from the rest of the school because they were just segregated from everybody else. And
Yeah.
I mean, it was a great program for these kids to go through. Like a lot of them graduated early with their GED and they got done fast, but there was a lot of like negativity towards them.
Sure.
And I wanted to start, me and the co-president, Mary Jo, who was the co-president there, we wanted to start a ministry to them because they didn't get to have FCA.
Okay.
So we had middle school FCAs on Tuesday and high school FCAs on Thursday. We wanted to have any other time during the week a ministry over there, but it was way harder to start something there
Sure.
than it was with middle school and high
Yeah.
school.
Yeah.
And I think that my heart just kind of went out to them because
Absolutely.
like they're not really getting a whole lot of interaction with people during the day.
Yeah.
And I just felt like a lot of people associate that the same way as people that are in prison.
Yeah.
That's what I've heard my whole high school career.
Gotcha.
And I felt like that's a way that God was leading me
Yeah.
into really having a heart after these people.
Yeah,
So,
and that's a lot of times where we discern God's will is at that intersection of desire and opportunity.
yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, that's a great thing.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of where the whole Boyce thing jumped back into the desire and opportunity because I desired to go to
Yeah.
Bible college, and it was between Tri-State and Boyce,
Yeah.
but Boyce was financially viable for me, and I got a full ride.
Yeah.
So
That's fantastic.
I'm very, very excited
Yeah.
about that.
Yeah. Well, I think you'll love Boyce. I've got some friends who teach there, and
Yeah.
yeah, it's. I mean, I enjoyed my time there, and feel like it benefited me and prepared me for
Mhm.
life and ministry, and developed relationships that have been
Yeah.
with me, gosh, 20 plus years now.
Yeah.
So that's a good thing.
Yeah. So speaking of your time at Boyce,
Yeah.
what kind of led you to being called in the ministry?
Yeah.
And then can you share a little bit about your Boyce time and
Yeah,
your
sure.
Southern Baptist?
So I'll back up. If I grew up, as you mentioned, I grew up in a pastor's home. My dad was a pastor in Lexington. My grandfather was also a pastor, and he pastored around the state. But when I was a kid, my dad was the senior pastor of the Ashland Avenue Baptist Church in Lexington, and my grandfather was his associate pastor.
Mhm.
So, grew up in that. Uh, I made a profession of faith when I was 5 years old. I grew up. I jokingly say that I was my dad's social experiment.
Yeah.
I've got a younger brother, but being the oldest, dad, like there's a video of me somewhere as a 3-year-old telling these really dark stories uh, of the Bible.
Yeah.
Uh, God seeking to kill Moses and Zipporah circumcising one of the sons and throwing the foreskin at the feet of Moses and saying, "You're a bridegroom of blood." Like there's a video of me as a child telling this story. My mom showed me some little thing I brought home from Sunday school. What everybody's telling their favorite Bible stories as little kids. Mine was when Jezebel fell out of the tower and the dogs licked up her blood.
Oh my God.
And so I mean, it was just I had kind of this a childhood inundated with the Bible, and but when I was 5 years old, I happen to be one of the people who's able to remember the time and the place. I don't think that that's necessary for your salvation to be able to pinpoint that, but I am able to. And it was July 4th. I was 5 years old, and I felt the weight of my sin like a ton of bricks. Uh, it wasn't. I did not think of sin in the abstract in that moment, like Jesus died for sins.
Mhm.
It hit me. Jesus died for my sin.
Mhm.
That I was a sinner. That even at 5, my disagreements with my brother and fights and disobey these were things that were done against God. And it shook me to my core. And I went into my dad's study. We were living in Arkansas at the time. He was in seminary, and uh, in tears, I was like, "Dad, I need Jesus." And I prayed that night, and asked Jesus to be Lord of my life, and
Mhm.
recognized Him as my Savior, and so I mean, I by God's grace, I never really had a period of distance from God. Um, that was, again, like I say, God's grace, the hard work of my parents. Not that in any way was I perfect. I was smart aleck and I was precocious, but I never had a serious period of doubt. I never had anything like that. But I too was at a camp. I was 11 years old, and we were at a camp, and it was for various reasons, it was a very interesting camp experience. But I remember I was sitting um, in the auditorium, and they were doing kind of a missions presentation that night, and just talking about lostness in the world. And I just felt God through His Spirit impress upon my heart, Michael, I'm going to use you to do something about this. And I couldn't shake it. And that night, I remember I called home and I told my dad, and my parents were super supportive. But you said people have kind of said stuff to you over the years about you being in ministry. Well, being the son and grandson of pastors, I mean, you hear it all the time. My whole life, you going into the family business. And I think my dad wisely, he in no way wanted to discourage me, but at the same time, he wanted to make sure that I wasn't succumbing to outside pressure.
Gotcha.
This wasn't somebody putting this pressure on me, but this was me responding to the Lord.
Yeah.
And at that time, I didn't know what it would look like. I didn't know what it would mean for me to follow Him. But I prayed with Dad. I prayed with some men in our church, some people who have discipled me and helped me, and really felt like God was calling me to preach. And honestly, so I, talk with my dad, and Dad says, well, if God's calling you, then we're going to start preparing you. And so as a 12-year-old, I'm reading systematic theologies.
Oh, wow.
I'm reading commentaries.
Yeah, I couldn't do that.
I mean, it is. I've always just been a nerd, and reading was just something I did. And Dad said, let's channel this thing that you're already doing for the Lord. And really, I remember I started preaching at the age of 14, and but when I was 14, again, Dad was pastoring in Lexington, but in 1997 he got a call inviting him to teach at the Southern Baptist Theological Seminary. I don't know how much you know about the history of Southern, but
not a whole lot yet.
Southern had moved away from the Bible for a long period of time, and then I believe it was 1993, 94. Dr. Al Mohler was called as president of the seminary and wanted to return the seminary to a strong belief in the Word of God, a strong commitment to the inerrancy and the truthfulness of Scripture.
Yeah.
And my dad was one of the first hires he made to kind of make a statement.
Yeah.
Tom Schreiner, who's still teaching at the seminary, was another one. And we moved to Louisville, and I was 14, and when we moved, for various reasons, we were homeschooled. Right? When my dad came in and told my brother and I that we were being homeschooled, there was weeping and wailing and gnashing of teeth. We were not happy about this. But he wanted to take us on a mission trip. Yeah. And we were going to be gone for 3 weeks. And the school said they will fail their assignments. And my dad, in a very to him fashion, said, "You can't tell me what to do with my kids. We're homeschooling." Like, oh, no. But so we moved to Louisville. We transitioned. We were homeschooled. And around the time I was 16, my brother, I was going into the 11th grade. My brother was going into the 9th grade. And we just begged and pleaded, please let us go to school. Please let us go to school. So my parents were like, okay. And we were looking at various schools in Louisville, different options. And my dad comes home from a faculty meeting one day, and Boyce had been a 2-year school for an associate's degree, but they were transitioning into a 4-year
Mm.
degree. And he said, hey, Dr. Moeller suggests, why don't you just go ahead and start at Boyce? So I went, okay. And
Wow.
so I started college there at 16, and was I just knew God had called me to pastor, and so my thinking at that time was, this is what I know God is directing my life towards.
So
As
you
soon
don't
as
have
I
a
can
you don't
pursue it.
you don't have a high school diploma
So
or
I
like
actually have a GED.
okay, gotcha.
I
Yeah.
got special permission, and I took my GED early,
Yeah.
and I have a GED,
Yeah.
and then um, yeah,
Wow.
yeah.
I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, you're
I
good.
was just shocked. I didn't expect that.
Yeah, you're
Um
good.
uh yeah, back to what you were saying
Yeah,
about the Boyce at 16. That is crazy.
yeah. It was unique.
Yeah. What
Uh,
was that like being, you know,
well, I tell you what made it really interesting. Two things. One, we didn't know that if you drop out of high school, because I mean, again, I'm technically classified as a high school dropout. Um, if you drop out and you're not enrolled, uh, you can't get a driver's license.
really?
And
Even
so
with the GED?
I did not. I could not take my GED initially.
Okay.
So I had to petition the state to take it earlier than I was allowed. But at that time, I mean, a lot of this was just done on the fly, quite
Yeah.
frankly. And I'm like, I can show you where I'm enrolled in college, and then that's not good. So thankfully,
Wow.
thankfully,
It's crazy.
the school I went to that was the undergraduate where my dad taught. So I just I just scheduled my classes on days he was teaching.
Yeah.
So I mean, we're going same place. Um, but the other thing that made it really interesting is, so the church my dad pastored in Lexington had its own Bible college, Lexington Baptist College, and Boyce assumed Lexington Baptist College that same year. And so I had guys uh, that I had classes with who were like my middle school in youth interns, and taught Sunday school classes, and were youth volunteers when I was a middle schooler. And so it made for a really unique
Yeah.
experience. Um, but it was just one of those. I don't know that I don't in any way regret it. I certainly don't know that I would recommend it. But I felt like, again, there was that crossroads of opportunity and desire. And I was so certain about what God's call on my
Hmm.
life was, that I have ambitions of, I thought this part of college life would be fun, and going to UK so I could get student tickets and watch basketball games and stuff. I thought, but that door opened, and I just saw it as God saying, this is preparing you for the
There you
rest of your
go. Yeah.
life. And we'll fool with the details later.
Yeah.
But this is, I love Elizabeth Elliot has a quote. She says, just do the next right thing.
Hmm.
And I just felt at the time like that was the next right thing. Um, but again, God had prepared in sort of my dad walking me through stuff about the Bible and theology. So I stepped into these classes feeling like I was somewhat prepared,
Yeah.
and that was a big blessing.
It's good. Yeah. I mean, it's awesome to hear all about the fact that you were so young and to get into college. Like even going this past semester in person at Marshall, I felt like a fish out of water
Oh yeah,
almost. Like I
sure.
or that I mean, that's not really a good analogy. I would say more like a a little tiny fish
In a
with
big
a in
pond.
a big pond.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I was just it was so overwhelming, like going to all these different places. And then I'm sure you heard about the injury I had in
Hmm.
October. So
Yeah.
uh, I had a similar scenario where I couldn't drive for a while, so I just had to go up with Dad because he's a professor at Marshall.
Right.
And sometimes I wouldn't go with him, but I'd go with my friend's girlfriend. I'd go with her up there, and I would just have to crutch around the entire campus.
Do what you got to do.
But I mean, yeah. Speaking about the injury, one way me and Michael got to really know each other was because of our similar interest in pro wrestling.
I think interest is an understatement.
Interest is an understatement. We're both marks, if you know what that means. This weekend is the Royal Rumble.
Yeah.
I know this is a Christian podcast, but we might as well talk about it because we haven't talked about wrestling with each other.
People who love Jesus should love wrestling too. Think about what. Remember, I told you one time when Jesus appeared to Jacob. What did they do?
They wrestled.
They wrestled.
It's a biblical sport.
I'm just saying.
Yeah. So
I'm just saying.
But the Royal Rumble is coming up this weekend.
Yes.
And I kind of want to know your thoughts about who you think is going to win. Because after church, you and me would usually toss ideas about bookings and stuff. And you actually came to a Royal Rumble show at my house.
Yeah, we watched several pay-per-views together.
Yeah, we did. Some of the first ones that went into quarantine.
Before they were PLEs.
Yes.
When they were PPVs.
When they were PPVs. But who do you think is big?
Yeah. So Henry and I we talked this very thing on the way to school this morning because Henry is just head over heels. The thing you got to always ask is where they're going with the storyline. And so who I want to win, who I think are going to win, are always two different things. And after Raw this week, I think that they are very clearly setting up CM Punk and Cody.
Yeah.
And I think that Punk so very clearly, I think he was probably promised main eventing a WrestleMania. That has been part of his story.
I would assume so.
Since he came back after his injury.
I think that's probably where it was going to build to.
Yeah, and I think after his injury last year, I think he's on the clock.
You need to capitalize on it.
He's not that much older than me, so I don't. But I can't imagine doing that. But I think this is the year. So I think it's going to be Punk. But I really like the fact that I can see probably 3 or 4 good storylines. Coming out of depending on who wins.
This has been one of the most unpredictable builds to a Rumble in a long time.
And
both of them.
Do I think could I? I've heard the rumors of Cody and Cena, and if they do that though, but I can still see a path to Punk versus Gunther. Best who's the best in the world.
I can see Orton versus Cody.
Orton is a big one, assuming he comes back.
I'm sure he will.
I wouldn't be surprised.
I think it's a kayfabe injury.
And I think he just needs rest.
Oh my gosh, yeah,
carrying all those new muscles he got around. But yeah, I can see several, but I would say Punk is my prediction.
I also am going with Punk, but me and my friends do predictions before, and we've got this belt. I don't even know. I think we started doing that around the time that we started watching them together.
Yeah.
We would make predictions, and if you won, you'd get your name put on the back of the belt. It would just be tape, and you'd write marker on it. But yeah, we started all that, and we were making predictions, and I made a little form, and I sent it to my friends to do. Because a lot of them don't respond, so I just sent them a form, and I'm like, just do it.
Just do it.
Because there's like maybe 3 or 4 that actually watch wrestling, and the rest just are there because I asked them to be. So
that's what a friend does.
Yeah, that's right. So I've seen a lot of crazy names thrown around because I gave them a list because I looked up the top odds.
Yeah.
And I gave them the odds, and then I put an other box, and I've seen a lot of really outlandish names. Specifically, one was Andre the Giant.
Yeah,
I don't think.
I didn't think that was.
I don't think that one's a good pick, but thank goodness we don't do punishments anymore for the loser. But I think Punk's gonna win. I had this pitch idea that I gave to my friend Logan. I said, "What if CM Punk and John Cena are the final two in the ring, and they're fighting, and Cena throws Punk out, and he's celebrating, and his music doesn't hit because there was somebody else that was in the match, but they got rolled out from under, and in comes Logan Paul and throws Cena out."
Yeah.
And the reason that I said that was because a few months ago there were some dirt sheet reports saying that they wanted Logan Paul and Gunther
Yeah.
at Mania, and my friend said, "I hope that you're not telling me the truth. I
Yeah.
hope that you're not telling me that's what's actually going to
I mean,
happen."
but I don't know. I mean, I don't know anything about Logan Paul outside of wrestling, and
Yeah.
I enjoy a Prime Hydration drink. I love Ice Pop.
Really,
Yeah, but
I don't like them as much.
I really like them.
I've got my friends really like them. Some of them do.
But I don't know anything else about the guy, but I know
Yeah.
he's got a pretty big following.
Yes,
And that's the other part of
it would draw numbers.
that's the other that's the big part of the equation
Mhm.
is it would make headlines.
Oh yeah.
But and you've got the Elimination Chamber coming
Mhm.
too, and so I we'll see. But
Mhm.
I'm predicting Punk.
I'm going to go with Punk as well.
But I would think Logan Paul's chest would look good with a couple of Gunther handprints on it.
I don't know if he can handle.
That
would
I think he'd be willing to try though.
I'm sure he
give him
would.
that.
I'm pretty sure they fought at a live event. I'm fairly certain there was one that happened. I mean, I'm not 100% certain, but yeah. So who do you think is going to win the women's rumble?
Women's Rumble, I think Charlotte Flair.
I feel like it's between Charlotte and Io. Those are probably the only two names that I can see.
I love Io so much, but I think Charlotte Flair is
Tiffany Stratton at
Yeah.
Mania.
Yeah. Matter of fact, I just saw something on Twitter right before you got here that they're really gonna they're planning on repackaging Charlotte
Mm-hmm.
to really play up the Flair stuff and push
Yeah.
her really hard.
I was listening to I don't know if you ever heard of Cultaholic, but that's so that's what I listened to. As I was going to pick up these glasses this morning, I was listening to the Daily Wrestling News, and they announced some kind of merch with Charlotte having its new design and this Top Girl moniker or whatever that they're giving her. And I think that if they're doing that, she's probably going to have to win or get tossed out by somebody credible. And
but I mean, I could see Bianca winning. I think if Bianca wins, that's an easy way for her to have a singles match at WrestleMania and not mess with any of this tag team stuff.
The only thing about that is the Jade Cargill stuff. I think that
Jade Cargill just needs to work a little bit longer.
I think that the only way that could happen, Bianca winning and her not getting involved with the Jade and Naomi stuff, is if Naomi's the one that attacked Jade. And I think that it's Bianca that did it because she's been babyface for who knows how long, and they'll probably want to switch her. But then again, I could also see her being the women's John Cena and always being babyface forever, because long hair that you dance to is not necessarily a heel stick.
No, I don't. I think even when she was in NXT and they tried her a little bit of a heel, people liked her too much.
Yeah. So, I mean, if they do that, then that could separate her from the Naomi stuff where they do Jade Naomi at Mania. There's a lot of women's matches that could happen at Mania this year. That's a first in a long time, is non-title women's matches.
Right.
First time in forever.
Well, that's the benefit of the two nights.
That's right. Did you see that they're bringing, I know you saw SummerSlam because they've announced that, but they're bringing two nights to the Rumble next year?
Yeah.
Yeah. I think it's in Saudi.
I'm not going then.
No, yeah. I went to the 2-night Mania this year.
Yeah.
Did you see that on
Facebook?
Oh my gosh. Yeah, I went to this year I went to the SmackDown before Mania, both nights of Mania, and NXT Stand Deliver. And then a few months later I went to SummerSlam. So I got treated pretty well with wrestling. Not this year because now it's 2025.
Right.
Last year.
It's the
new.
wrestling
it's
calendar.
Fresh.
It's like college basketball. It's the 24 season until Mania. The end of April.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that's kind of the big way as to how we got to know each other was the whole wrestling thing, or we'll not get to know each other, but
deepened our
deepen our
friendship.
friendship. And yeah, I mean, even though we're at separate churches now,
Yeah,
we're still in good contact.
absolutely.
I mean, especially with this voice stuff going on, I've had to reach out to you
Yeah,
multiple times, and I mean, I called you after.
you did. You called
Uh,
from campus.
I was very excited to be up there.
Yeah, it's a
And,
great campus.
so, I mean, you stayed on campus,
I did
right?
not.
Okay.
I lived at home, but we
Were you
lived
a
in
commuter?
Louisville. Yeah,
Okay.
I mean we lived 7 miles
Yeah.
from the seminary,
Gotcha.
and so I lived at home all through uh, my bachelor's and my MDiv.
There you go. Yeah. I mean, that's the way to do it. I mean, that's what I did at Marshall. I wasn't
Yeah,
on campus, or I was on campus, but I didn't stay there. I stayed at
yeah.
home.
It
I didn't want to experience the dorm life.
well, I mean,
But
I
Boyce is not
would
a party school,
no,
so
no, and even less. I mean, they didn't have any athletics or anything when I
yeah.
was there, but they were Boyce has really changed the campus of Southern
Hmm.
as it's grown, and when I went, I mean, people were still wearing suits and stuff around campus. Students, ties, like you don't see that ever anymore. Um, and Boyce really brought a kind of a youth movement, and it's grown exponentially.
Hmm.
But yeah, I mean, I would I have enjoyed it if it wasn't that again. I could live rent free
Hmm.
7 miles from campus,
Yeah.
so anytime I needed to be at campus, it was
Yeah.
pretty easy. But yeah,
Yeah. I mean, that's awesome about all the boy stuff, and I mean, I'm very excited to go.
yeah,
And I mean, I've always been kind of nervous to be away from home,
sure,
so that's why I didn't want to stay on campus at Marshall, other than the fact it was a 30-minute drive,
yeah,
and like twice a week I would have to drive down to South Point and back, so it was on my way.
yeah,
But uh, to have the opportunity to go up there and stay, I'm actually very excited,
yeah.
and I think it's because I want to be there.
Well, and I mean, again, from my experience, uh, like okay, when you're doing physical therapy
Hmm.
degrees, and maybe I'm generalizing, and maybe this is bad, but like business degrees, any kind, you almost feel like you're in competition with other people,
Oh, absolutely, yeah,
right? And I don't necessarily mean that in a bad way,
yeah.
but you are competing for jobs, you are competing for business,
Hmm.
and as part of a healthy thing. I'm not trying to say it as a negative, but when you go to a school like Boyce or Tri-State or a Bible college, you kind of have this mentality of we're in the trenches together
Hmm.
because you realize the people you're in these classes with are going to be people you rely on
Hmm.
for encouragement or help. Um, a friend of mine this week from seminary, I saw on Facebook um, something that was going on with him, and I just texted him to encouraging me, thanked me, and I mean, with this last 8 months, with all Sarah's gone through,
Hmm.
I mean, people have come out of the woodwork
Hmm.
from seminary praying for you,
Yeah,
and I mean, like so, the dean at Boyce, Dustin, he and his family, I don't know them super duper well. We've met, but they pray for us
yeah,
multiple times a week. And I heard that sometimes if they forget to pray for Michael, Sarah, and Henry, their girls will say, "Oh, we got to pray for Michael, Sarah, Henry."
hmm,
And that's that community.
yeah,
And there's something that's really helpful about that. And I just look around, like here in Kentucky, and I can see all these guys I've gone to school with that are pastoring now, and um, it's just it's sort
yeah,
of a network of friendships.
yeah. I mean, I've made plenty of friends just
Oh,
talking about the Bible
sure,
at Marshall.
absolutely, yeah,
And I mean, like I made a really good friend at Marshall, which that's the thing. That's kind of the reason I had a little bit of drawback against going away from Marshall, is because I made, I think, two really good friends, and then I felt bad for leaving them, and then I had
sure,
other friends that I talked to all the time, um, and I just kind of didn't know how to tell them that I was leaving. But I mean, I didn't know them too well beforehand, but I grow very strong connections with people fast. So I mean, one of them is a Catholic, and we've had conversations after class, and I mean, we would just go and sit down and talk. But uh, I mean, just even in discussions with him, he's shown me that his faith is very,
Mhm.
very strong, and it's very important to him. And that's one of the things that I was sitting down talking to my friend Xander about. I
Yeah,
mean, I I think today, whenever we're filming this, the 30th, right? Is it 30th
I
day?
think so.
Oh my gosh, yeah. Uh, I
Yes.
uh, I recorded a video with him, and he always talks about how important his faith is. And I mean, we were friends in middle school, but he kind of drifted away, and then he came back, and now he's into the called into the ministry. And
Hmm.
I mean, he's going to KCU, and he's already a youth pastor at a Nazarene church. But
Really? You're-
well, I'm going to have a Nazarene pastor on here
yeah,
next week.
sure.
I don't know if you know Keith Dixon or
I
not.
don't. Yeah,
He's the pastor at Plaza.
yeah.
I mean, he's a great friend.
We all go to heaven
Yeah,
together, and then
I
they
just
go,
like
"Oh,
to
the
give him
Baptists were
crap.
right all along."
I like to give him a little crap.
Yeah,
But
yeah,
no, I mean, I there's a lot of great friendships that have been made through the
yeah,
gospel,
yeah.
and I mean, just growing those friendships. Like that's one thing about my friend group I have now is I mean, they're all my friends from high school, and
Hmm.
they're my friends from middle school too, which I'm
Hmm.
very
Yeah.
blessed to say that I've got a strong friend group. Like we just started a basketball team at Rose Hill. I got a message from Matt, and he said, "Hey, this guy's wanting to start a basketball league, like a men's basketball league. Would you want to be on it?" And it was with me and a couple other people, and they were all like, "No, I'm good." And I was like, "I'll do it." So uh, I reached out to my friends, and I was like, the ones that go to Rose Hill, I was like, "You want to be on this team?" They were like, "Yes." And then the ones that had gone to youth with me a couple times, I was like, "Do you want to do this?" So now, I mean, we see each other all the time,
Yeah.
and I mean, even those YouTube videos I make with my friends and stuff, that's uh, we still stay close together. But I think
Yeah.
part of the reason that we've stayed so tight is because uh, not just me, but a couple of my other friends in the friend group are very vocal about our faiths.
Yeah.
Um, and then I don't know if you remember JC or not.
Oh, sure.
Yeah,
Yeah.
JC. He just he rededicated his life back in back at church camp.
Hmm.
He went with me and a couple of my other friends, and I mean he's been strong about it, and he's had many questions. Like I've got a friend who right now is on a Mormon mission. One of my really close friends, uh, he's a Mormon, and I remember one time JC asked him when we were at my friend Jake's house. He said, "So what even is the difference between Mormonism and Christianity?"
Hmm.
And then that unraveled a
Oh,
whole can of
sure.
worms because,
Sure.
uh, I mean, I was jumping into the conversation and like trying to talk to both of them, and it kind of went all over the place.
Sure. I
Uh,
can imagine.
but I mean, yeah, the fact that me and my friends have stayed so vocal about our faith has not only kept us together, the ones that are
Yeah.
like Christians, but it also, I think, keeps the others involved
Yeah. I get
because it
that.
allows us to solve issues
Hmm.
from a biblical standpoint rather than just going at each other's throats if
Yeah.
we have disagreements, which
Yeah.
we've had disagreements,
Right.
but everybody
Of course.
that's friends or family does.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
but
Yeah. Absolutely.
yeah.
And the thing is, as we branch out, our world gets bigger,
Hmm.
but our friendships don't have to get smaller.
Yeah.
And there's just always room in our lives for more people.
Hmm.
And my best friend when I moved to Louisville, when I was 14, he's still my best friend. Uh, we talk and text and stuff.
Hmm.
Still, we don't get to see each other very
Yeah.
much, but we're still involved in each other's lives, and then so over the years, God's brought any number of new people in,
Yeah.
and what's interesting is those relationships you built and the way you encourage each other and strengthen each other as you go out. then it just multiplies the ability
Mhm.
all of us have to do that for each other.
Yeah. I mean, that's one of the things that I've noticed in my family too, is just like the impact that they have coming here and
Mhm.
having that support system of just being biblically founded. And I think that a lot of churches lack that nowadays, is being biblically founded. I mean, I had to search probably
Yeah.
5 to 10 different YouTube channels before I found a church live stream that I could watch throughout the week on my car rides and stuff that was biblical and not prosperity and all that stuff, you
Yeah.
know? So, I mean, that's the good thing about having biblically sound, not only churches, but friendships.
Right.
And I mean, that's how you grow.
Iron
Iron
sharpens iron.
sharpens iron.
Yeah.
Exactly. Um, so yeah, but there's one last thing that I want to do before we wrap this up.
Yeah.
There's this segment that I have been, or that I'm going to keep doing.
Okay.
I say this
Okay.
because it's the second one.
Second episode.
But I did this with my friend Xander, and I put him on the spot, and I was like, "Tell me the gospel, or could you communicate the gospel in 60 seconds?" And he was like, "Uh, not without anything in front of me." So what I decided to do instead was I just told him, I said, "What would you tell the people about Jesus?"
Okay.
So if you could just tell the people watching this, who is Jesus to you, and
Okay.
kind of just,
Uh,
yeah,
I mean, I, uh, I really, I mean, I'll take both questions
both questions. Perfect. I love it. I love it.
and do that. But Jesus is the one who created us. The Father created us in His image through the Son, and I talked about this last night. Sin is not just the doing of bad things. It is also the failure to do good things, but at an even deeper level, it's a Augustine, I think, really helped me with this. It's a disordered love, right? In Psalm 52, the psalmist says that God basically punishes people not because of the bad they did, but because they did not take refuge in Him.
Mm-hmm.
And so we turned away from God. We said, I don't want anything to do with you. We're going to go our own way. And when we did that, as the Bible says, the wages of sin is death, right? It's not God's punishment of us. It is the just deserts of our rejection of Him, our turning away from Him. And who Jesus is Jesus is the gift of love from the Father that He sent to us to live in our place and die in our place and die for us so that He could give us His righteousness as He took on Himself our punishment,
Mm-hmm.
and that He rose from the dead as the guarantee that all who are in Him enjoy the life that He gives us. And so, who is Jesus to me? Jesus is the one who loved me in all of my brokenness. Jesus is the one who loved me in all of my rebellion. Jesus is the one who loved me even when I did not love Him and did not want anything to do with Him. And when I see the love of the Father through the Son, all I can do is love Him in return.
Mm-hmm.
And that is, I think, really what the gospel is at its core, is receiving the love of the triune God and returning it
Mm-hmm.
uh, by faith, and then living that love out.
All right. Yeah. I mean, amen. That's all. That's all else I can say to that. You know, you just nailed it. I mean, as you should. You know, you're a pastor. You're studied, and um, that's awesome, because I did a sermon Sunday at
Yeah.
my friend's youth group, and I shared the gospel. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
I went up there and I told him, I said, "We're learning about the gospel," which you would typically think I'm going to church to hear about the gospel, and not always. You don't
No.
always.
No.
So I went up there and I told him, like, first off, this is what the gospel is not, and
Mm-hmm.
then I started listing off like some false doctrines and saying why these were devastating to our faith. But then I mentioned the fact that God's grace is not just sufficient for us, but sufficient for everybody that would put their trust in Jesus. And I mean, I've had friends tell me that they're going to hell anyway because they're so far along and they're so far bad and so far
Yeah.
messed up. And that, I mean, just last week I had a friend. If you're watching this, you know who I'm talking about. I'm not going to name him by name, but you know who I'm talking about. He told me, he was like, "Yeah, I'm going to hell anyway. I mean, somebody like you're gonna go to heaven regardless because you're
Yeah.
a good guy." And I was like, I
Yeah.
just want to be like,
Yeah. So, I mean, I talked about this last night. So in Psalm 52 is one of the Psalms that has this superscription that tells us the historical events, right? And I'll try to say this brief, but it refers to 1 Samuel 21. There's this dude named Doeg the Edomite,
yeah,
right? Really unfortunate name.
yeah,
But David is on the run from Saul. David finds himself at the tabernacle and he goes to the priest Ahimelech, and David lies. David says that he's there as an emissary of Saul's and he's hungry, and Ahimelech gives him the showbread. David says, I'm defenseless. Ahimelech gives him Goliath's sword. And so David goes on his merry way. Doeg, who is Saul's shepherd, watches this whole thing. And so Doeg then goes and he tells Saul. And he tells Saul, and he kind of does this half-truth stuff.
yeah,
And he makes it seem like Ahimelech was a little bit more receiving of David. And Saul goes and he just kills Ahimelech in his house, right? He just murders him.
yeah,
In Psalm 52, you have David furious that Doeg lied. He speaks of him lying and loving deceit. But here's the thing, David did too.
yeah,
But what is the difference in Psalm 52? David doesn't say the difference is you did bad and I'm a good person. The David says that the difference is I took refuge in God and you did not.
yeah,
And that's the difference, right? When all of history is divided and there's the lines of those who are received by God and those who are rejected by God, the line's not good person and bad person. The line's those who took refuge
yeah,
in Jesus and those who didn't. And the line that gets into heaven is going to have murderers, and it's going to have blasphemers, and it's going to have criminals, and it's going to have all kinds of reprobates in there. And the line of good that doesn't, it's going to have Baptist preachers,
mm-hmm.
and it's going to have people who were never missing Sundays and were deacons, and people who were good moral people but never sought refuge in Jesus. And just that last night really hit me.
Mm-hmm.
One, that again, this isn't the doctrine of the New Testament. This is the Bible.
Yes.
But just the way David puts it there is I think so striking.
Mm-hmm. I mean, the Old Testament law, I mean, is to point us to the fact that we need a Savior. So it doesn't matter, what you've done. It's just a matter of if you put your faith in Jesus,
Yeah,
and that's the big thing. I mean, it's very important to do that
yeah,
because without that, I mean, I couldn't imagine not doing that from the point that I'm at right now. I mean,
yeah. No, there will not be any boasting in heaven about anything but Jesus.
right.
Nobody in heaven is going to talk about how good they are. And even just in another conversation I had this week, one of these days, I think we will all be surprised by how sinful we actually are.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
things we don't even know we're doing now, things we're not
Yeah.
aware of. And yet, because I'm in Christ and I'm taking refuge, my confidence in my hope, this Sunday, Peter says, be prepared to give a defense for the hope that is in you. He doesn't say be prepared to defend truth.
Yeah.
He says be prepared to defend hope. And my hope never has to waver because I'm certain of what Jesus did.
All right. Well, I want to thank you for being on this. You have
Thank you.
blown it out of the water. I mean, this was a fun conversation, and
You're just saying that because we agreed on our Royal Rumble picks.
that's right. That's exactly what it is. Speaking of one last real quick predictions.
Yeah, yeah.
Cody or Kevin?
Oh, I'm gonna have to go with Cody,
I'll agree with that. Yeah.
but I cannot say I have a hope either way.
Yeah.
I just think the story headed to
Yeah.
Mania is for Cody.
Mm-hmm.
I thought if they were going to take the belt off of him, they would have done it before now.
Yeah.
But
You can't enter the Rumble as champion
no.
and then not go to Mania as champion. I mean, I feel like
But-
I've barely seen that
yeah.
other than the B champions, you know.
But I mean, Kevin Owens' T-shirt game is so on point right now.
I saw somebody predicting that he was going to come out with
the Cody Sucks
a
Eggs
Stardust shirt.
Yeah, the Cody Sucks Egg shirt
Oh my gosh.
with Dory Funk there was just a chef's kiss.
And what have you thought about the Motor City Machine Guns?
Here's what I think about. I feel like Motor City Machine Guns are in a there's a group of wrestlers out there who are ultra talented and incredibly gifted performers, but their size just prohibits them from making it in WWE. And I feel like if I'm not intimidated by you, then I don't see why like Drew McIntyre would be. And I mean I know they're tag, but I feel like they're so good, and I like that they put them with DIY.
Yes.
A similar sized.
I think DIY are still winning.
I just Motor City Machine Guns. I've thought for years are super talented, and I don't really follow wrestling outside of WWE, but I feel like they're so limited because of their size, and I don't know. I feel like the WWE, part of what's always been fun about it is it's larger than life.
Yeah.
But you kind of back yourself into a corner by doing that too.
Yeah. I mean, you cut out all these talented performers. Like the only reason some of these smaller guys worked was because of specific gimmicks they had, you know.
But you know, I mean, I remember Rey Mysterio beating the Big Show. So, I mean,
anything can happen in wrestling.
But yeah, but I mean, like that's just one of them. You just watch and you're like,
I mean, you just kind of have to pretend that it's
okay. Yeah, but I mean, there is such a thing as asking to.
Hi. So the microphones unfortunately died, and there was about maybe 3 to 4 minutes left of the conversation where we just talked about wrestling. So yeah, thank you very much for watching this podcast, and I'll have to have him on some other time to make up for those 4 minutes. So thank you for watching the Faith Works podcast, building you a faith that works.